Hello, how you guys doing today? Yes, I am back and I'm here with another book review. Yes, okay. Oops, there we go. Yes, I am. So, this book is called The Secret Garden. Now, this is a classic. They saying this is a childhood classic and favorite. I'm just reading it now, but I'm thinking I seen maybe a film, maybe about this. I'm not sure, but it seemed familiar to me. But the story was quaint and it was a beautiful story. Let me tell you, and it was inspiring. Yes, it was. This is an inspiring book if you want to tell children. I think it's very good, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about it today. Okay, okay. So the book is called The Secret Garden, and okay, so it was about this little girl, all right? Her name is, was, or whether, what's her name? Okay, so the little girl name is Mary, and she's the little girl, and what happened is, she actually was living in India, right? I guess she was born there also, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think she was born in India because her father was like in the service, and her mother was a prima donna. Like she was very beautiful, and she was just like she used to throw parties and things like that, and she was very like outgoing and everything, and she loved to laugh and things like that. But they didn't want any children. Well, she didn't really want any children, because when she had Mary, she had her living in another house, like they lived in one house, but on the same land, it was like another cottage built for her to stay, and like servants and things like that took care of her, you know, like the nanny and things like that, They didn't want to hear her cry and they didn't want to see her too much, they told her. So they was just like, okay, fine. So they took her and pretty much raised her, the servants of in India, whatever. But it was this horrible plague that came through I guess the town or the village that they were staying at, and people were dying, and the lady who was taking care of her died, and she was like, well, what's going on, what's going, and she didn't know. And then her mother was came to her one day and was like, and let her know that the lady who's been taking care of you all these years, she's passed. But she was like a mean little girl and whatever. She was very frail looking and things like that, because she really didn't have any love. Like even the lady who took care of didn't like her too much. And so she just was like, just, like contrary. Like she was very, very like, uh, negative, and she walked around mean with a mean face. She never smiled, she never laughed, and she was just like that because I guess it's because her mother and her father were never around, and she never really had anyone to actually show her things. She didn't go to school or anything. She didn't know too much. She just knew about what her nanny and the servants would teach her. So, but sooner or later, they just told her to go ahead in your room and whatever. So she was just in her room and she was there for a while. She was just like, wow, is anyone going to feed me? Anyone going to come check on me? It's been a while, you know what I'm saying? And come to find out, she's been in this room, and she was just like, then next thing you know, it was just so quiet. She didn't hear anything. And so one day she hear like this rumbling and people coming up, and it was actually like a officer, and he said, yeah, well, he said, let's see. He said, this officer was like, yeah, well, they were saying how it was a little girl here, but I don't know. We never seen this little girl or anything like that, but they saying that she did have a child. So he goes up into the house and he goes up into the room and he see her standing in the room by herself. And he's like, oh my God, he's just, like shocked that she's here. He said, oh my God, baby, are you okay? It's such a shame that they left you here and no one came for you. And she was just standing there like, yeah. He was like, we're going to have to find somewhere for you to go because I'm sorry to tell you, your mother and your father has passed away. They're dead. And we didn't even know you were here until someone in the village said, well, I think that she had a child up there at that house. And so, we thought maybe we would find a dead body, but we see that you're alive. And she's like, yes, I'm alive. And he was like, well, okay, well, we're gonna have find somewhere for you to go. So they found a family somewhere in India and they sent her there and whatever. They had children also. And, she was just so rude. And, they really took care of her in a way where she was just like, really like a little princess. She didn't dress herself. They dressed her. They combed her hair. They fed her. They made food for her. They would even feed her. You know what I'm saying? So she didn't do any of these things for herself. Being 9 years old, she didn't know how to put her clothes on or anything like that, or her shoes, or tie her shoes or anything like that, because someone always done it for her. So she's at this house and now with these other children, and she's just like looking at them like, sorry, like I don't want to talk to you. And they was like, well, you're just so mean. And she's like, and she really doesn't have any bother with them children because, like I said, she's been alone by herself for so long. She don't even know how to be friendly or interact with other people or other children. So she just like, so she goes off on her own and she likes to go on her little, pretend she's making a garden and do little things like she's building a garden. And one of the boys of the family come up to her like, yeah, well, why are you so contrary? We're gonna say, Mary, Mary, quite contrary. And they just made this song about her and it's this and that. And she didn't care. She like, I am who I am and I don't care about what you think. And she used to just play by herself. Then one day, someone comes to her and said, we found your uncle and he want us to send you to him. So it was actually her mother's brother or maybe her father's brother. Sure, I can't remember it. Wow. But yeah, so she he sends for her and he lives in England and he lives in this big mansion like type castle with more than 100 bedrooms. Yes, it's huge. And so they send for her and whatever. So she takes the trip to England and Miss Bradley, I guess that's what I'm gonna call her. She picks her up and and they driving on the way and she's just looking at the land and things like that and she's like, yeah. And it's a land called the moor and so and they ride through the moor and she's like, oh, this is just so dreadful, this moor. And she was like, and they just drive. And so, they having a little conversation, but she arrives at this house and whatever, but he's not there. She said, well, he's not there. And we don't want you go roaming off. You see these two rooms right here. They took her into these two rooms down this corridor and said, and this is where you would stay. And this is where you will live. Okay. And so she said, okay, it's nice. It was like two rooms. One that she was like a nursery and the other one was her bedroom. And so she's like, okay, fine. And so she go there, so they feeding her every day. She gets up in the morning, and another lady come. Her name is Martha. And Martha like, yeah, so here's the clothes that you're gonna wear today. And they're saying, and he's like, well, aren't you gonna dress me? She said, no, you don't know how to dress yourself. You're 9 years old. No, people put my clothes on for me, put my shoes on for me, and my socks, and does my hair. Yes, and they feeds me. And she like, oh well, we don't do that here. And she's like, what? You don't do that here? Well, how am I supposed to get dressed? How am I supposed to eat? She's like, well, and Martha looking at her like, well, I don't like this little girl. Listen, you're 9 years old. You need to learn how to do these things for yourself. And she's like, and she's so skinny and frail, because she was pretty much starving in India. And she was like, yeah, and the lady was talking about it. They said, yeah, she's an ugly little something, isn't she? Her mother was so beautiful, and her father was so handsome. Why is she so unattractive? And she just got the most morbid personality. Like, yeah, and they was just talking. And she was like, and she's just a queer little girl, and she's looking. I never thought of myself as queer, but if I'm queer, I just be queer. You know what I'm saying? So, so she's just like, she's a yeah. But then as time go on, and then she's learning how to dress herself because when she's becoming more independent, she's doing her hair, and she's a little scrawny little something, very little and weakly looking. You know what I'm saying? And so one day, they was walking. She didn't have anything to do. It's raining. It's pouring outside, and she's like, and then everybody's busy doing the things they need to do, and she's left alone. She said, "Well, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna walk around this castle, and I'm gonna." And it kind of she was. very inquisitive. She was like that, and they got all these rooms here, and Miss Bradley told her, "You're not allowed to go walking around into these rooms that are closed up. They are not for you to open, and not for you to go rummaging in." So she's like, "Hmm." Well, now I'm interested, so I'm gonna go look at these rooms that they have closed up. Why they got them all locked up? I wonder why. What's in them? So she goes and she started walking around through the corridors and stuff and checking all the rooms and seeing all the beautiful things that were in these rooms. So then she hears like this little like cry, like this little sobbing and stuff like that. And she was like, "Well, what is that?" And so she's trying to look like, where is it coming from? What's all this crying and sobbing? And she's looking, then Miss Brady come out and, "What you doing? Why are you walking around out here? Didn't we tell you to stay on your side and in your rooms?" And she said, "Come on." Let me see. She said, "But I hear crying. I hear screaming and sobbing." She said, "No, that's just this old house." She said, "No, I'm sure of it. I do." He said, "No, no, no. It's just the old house. There, you didn't hear anything. So just come on." So she goes back to her room, and Miss Martha, the one who be taking care of her mostly, comes in there. And she's like, "Yeah, listen, Martha, I hear someone crying and sobbing over there on the other side of the manor, and I believe that there's someone there and they're in pain." And she said, "No, no, 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 you can't be, no, you're mistaken. There's no one here." And that's probably the sounds of the castle. So she's like, "No, I know what I heard." And so, and then one day they was out walking and whatever through the manor, and they hears it again. She said, "Do you hear that? You hear that whining and that sobbing and stuff and that crying and screaming?" And Martha's like, "Oh no, I don't hear anything." She said, "Oh, you must hear it. I hear it. I know I'm not going insane. I hear someone crying and sobbing." And he's like, "No, no, 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 you don't. You don't. I'm sorry, you don't." And she's like, "Come on, let's just get back to your room and stuff like that." And she goes back. So she said, "It's such a nice." So the next day she's like, "It's such a nice day out. Can I think I could go out? Yeah, go ahead out and run free." So she's out running free, and because they got beautiful gardens and lands all around the manor and whatever. So she's out there and she's having fun, and she runs into this gardener, okay? And she says to him, she's like, "Yeah, so what are you doing? What are you planning?" He said, "But he's a mean little something. He's queer." And he was like, "Nah, I ain't doing nothing." And he really don't want to talk to her. He gets up and walk away and whatever. And she's like, "Shoot." And so then she's like, "Yeah, well, I don't. What am I gonna do? And where am I gonna play? And this, and that." So she sees him again the next day, and she goes up to him like, "Yeah, so what you doing?" He said, "Oh, I'm gardening. I'm gardening." "And who are you?" I mean, never was no children here before. "Who are you? Are you new here?" And she was like, "Yes, yes. My name is Mary, and I come from Indy." And Mr. Craven, that's the guy, that's the lord of the house, I guess. He sent for me because he's my uncle, and he's gonna raise me from now on. He was like, "Oh, okay." She was like, "But what do I hear?" She was like, "Yeah, but what's going on with this place?" He was like, "None. This place is very is a great place, and it's very inconspicuous." He was like, "And it also has a lot of secrets. Like it has a secret garden, and this and that." She was like, "A secret garden?" He was like, "Yes." And she was like, he was like, "Well, it's actually a garden that's locked up. It used to be Mrs. Craven, but she died. She had a terrible accident and she died. And ever since she died, it was actually her garden. And the husband, Mr. Craven, he has it locked up and no one can go there." She said, "No one, no one." He locked it up and he buried the key deep into the ground. And he don't want anyone going there. And she's like, "Oh, wow, why not? That is just so interesting, you know?" She like, "That is so interesting that it's a garden that has been locked up for how long?" He said 10 years. She said, "Wow." And she was 10 years old. She said, "Wow, that's a long time. That's been since I've been alive here." And he was like, "Yeah, well." And so you just go ahead and mind your business and go on and play. And this and that. So she's like, and she's curious about this garden now. She's like, "Now, why would they have this garden locked up for 10 years?" She was like, "I want to see it." So it was this nice little bird flying around or whatever. And and the gardener used to talk to this bird. And she was like, "Are you talking to the bird?" He was like, "Yeah." She said, "You rather talk to the bird than talk to me?" He's like, "Yes, because the bird is nice. The bird is kind. The bird is a good bird. He's a kind bird. And he's been here for a very long time. And he always keeps me company while I'm gardening." And she was like, he said, and plus, I'd rather talk to animals than some humans any day. And she's like, he's queer. He's queer like me. so, so she goes and she's like, Dad, bird, I want to see this garden they have locked up and whatever. So one day she's walking through there, and lo and behold, she sees something shiny on the ground, and it's the key and whatever. And she's like, oh, I bet this the key to this garden and whatever. So she's looking at the key, and she's saying she's going all around trying to search for the door that this key unlocks, but she cannot find it. And she's looking and looking, and days she's looking and looking, and she's like, wow, I can't find it. I can't find the door and whatever. But then lo and behold, one day the bird stands on the wall because it was a long wall, and she was just looking all up against the wall, but the wall was covered in like little vines and things, and so you really couldn't see the bricks, you know, because the flowers and stuff was like covering the wall. So, but one day the bird showed her exactly where to come to, and she went over there to see the bird and whatever, and she trips over something and fall, and then she falls between all the grass, and she sees the doorknob, and she said, "Wow, maybe this is the doorknob that the key belongs to, and it's the secret garden behind there." So she goes and unlock it, and she walks on in, and lo and behold, it's a garden. She said, but it looked like it would have been beautiful at one time, but all she sees is like dead vines and things like that, and bushes with no flowers. And she was like, it probably was a beautiful garden, but everything's dead. I wonder if everything's dead. I need to find someone who knows about flowers and gardens to let me know if all the bushes and trees and vines are dead. So she goes back and she's like asking Martha about gardening. And Martha said, well, I have a brother who knows all about gardening. He's 12 years old, and he also has animals. He talks to animals. He's like an animal talker, and he's very good with animals and things like that, and gardens and things. And yes, he even have a garden at my mom's house. He's growing all types of vegetables and flowers, and he's very good. And she's like, well, do you think maybe he can come and help me with my garden? I found a little spot, and I want to plant some seeds and things and get some gardening tools. And so he was like, I'm sure he would do that for you. So she said, yes, I have a few shillings, and here you go. You can give them to him, and I'm going to write him a letter telling him the things that I need. And she's like, okay, and I'll give it to him, and I'm sure he will be obliged to give you these things so you could start working in your garden. And she's like, okay, thank you, Martha. And Martha said to herself, well, she's changing. She's becoming so much nicer and things like that. And she's not as queer as she was, and she's smiling now and a little more interested. So as time go on, she's in the garden and she meets Martha's brother, and his name is Deacon. And she's like, "Hey, Deacon, um, nice to meet you." And he's like, "Hello." And she says, "Oh, Deacon is just so beautiful. He has these beautiful eyes, this beautiful hair, and this big, beautiful mouth, and he's just perfect. And he has animals with him, and he's just the kindest person you could ever meet." And she just loved Deacon, and her and Deacon is just working in the garden together. And she starts saying to herself, maybe I can trust Deacon and show him my secret garden. So she says, can you keep a secret, Deacon? He said, yes, I can keep a secret. Well, if it's not a bad secret, he said, no, it's a great secret. And she said, well, what is it? He said, I found a garden, a secret garden. It used to be Mrs. Craven's, but she had passed away, and Mr. Craven locked it up for 10 years, and no one couldn't enter. But I found the key, and then I found the door. And so now I'm entering the garden, and I want us to bring it back to life. Could you look at it and show me and tell me if the vines and the trees and the bushes are still alive? And if they are, how can we get them to grow buds and flowers and roses again? And he said, yeah, sure. So they goes into the garden and whatever. And he started looking around, and he's like, wow, he's amazed. And he's like, yes. And he started pointing out little things and showing her how she could tell if the flower is still alive. Because even though it has a brown coating on the outside, if you dig deep inside and look, you will see that it's green on the inside. And that's how you know it's still alive. And we just had to trim all the old and and move it on out of the way to give it room to breathe and so the water can get back to it and the sun can get to it. And then I'm pretty sure it will be growing flowers in no time. Okay, so Deacon and Mary, they really was working in that garden. They was working hard every day. And as time go on and she's out there in the sun and digging into the dirt and out in the environment and getting and receiving good air, she started to change. She started to put on weight. She had an appetite now. She was eating more and she was becoming this beautiful little girl. Her face was filling out. Her hair was getting fuller and starting to grow. And she said, "Wow, you see me, everyone's saying that I'm becoming better now and I'm starting to look like something and I don't put on weight. I'm growing just like our garden is growing." He said, "Yes." And that's what happened. She was like, "Wow." So then one day again, she's in the bed and she's asleep and she started about a horrible scream, wakes her up. And she's like, "Ah!" And she gets up and she hear all this horrible screaming and she go following it. It's in the middle of the night and everyone's asleep. She going down corridors trying to find where all this crying and screaming is from. And lo and behold, she comes to this door and she hear all this screaming and crying and moaning. And she opens the door. And when she walks in, she sees a little boy laying in the bed, looking all frail and sickly, with these big gray eyes and long black eyelashes. And she's just staring at him. And then he turns around and he looks and he sees her. And he stares at her and they're staring at each other. And the little boy says, "Are you a ghost?" She says, "No, I'm not a ghost." She said, "Are you a ghost?" He said, "No, I'm not a ghost, even though I'm very sickly and I may be dead soon." And she said, "Really?" He was like, "Yes." And he says, "Can you come closer?" And she walks up to him and she says, "Well, who are you?" She said, "I'm Mary. I live here." She said, "You do?" He was like, "Yes." She was like, "And I'm Colin. I live here too." She said, "I did not know you was here. Who are you?" I'm Mr. Craven's. I'm Craven's son. Master Craven, my uncle. He didn't tell me he had any children. How long you been here?" He was like, "Well, I'm 10 years old. I've been here for a while. I've been here every day because I can't leave the bed because I'm very sick and I'll be dying soon." She said, "Are you sure?" "I don't know about that. You've been here for 10 years. Maybe you're just fine." He's like, "No, because I always been sick and I can't stand for people to look at me." And she was like, "Oh." He was like, "Go pull that curtain back over there." And she go pulls the curtain back. She was like, "Wow, who is that?" She said, "That's my mother, Mrs. Craven." He said, "So why do you have her covered with curtains? Why don't you look at her paintings?" He said, "Because she's sitting there smiling and laughing. And I feel like she's smiling and laughing at me because I'm so sickly. She died and left me here all alone. And since I favor my mother so much, my father don't want anything to do with me. He's mean and nasty, and he says it's better that I don't even exist, so I don't see him and whatever. So I'm here all by myself, and I am going to grow a hunchback on my back, and I'm going to be a cripple." And so she's like, "Oh, that's so sad. You want to hear something?" And she started talking to him about the secret garden. And he's like, "The secret garden?" She said, "Yes. Me and Deacon, and he has animals and pets that he found in the wild, and then he talks to them." And she started talking to him about all the great things they doing in the garden and everything. And little Colin's like, "Wow, I would love to go see this secret garden." He said, "Well, can you keep a secret? Because no one can know about this garden because it's forbidden. No one can go in there. It's been locked up for 10 years, and he took the key and buried it 10 so deep in the ground, but it came out, and I found the door. And we're in there, and we're gardening. We're bringing all the bushes and flowers back and everything that used to be in there, and everything is growing. And look at me. I'm growing too. I was a weak little thing when I got here, and they called me ugly and said that I was just the horrible thing that I ever saw. And but look at me now. I'm gaining weight. I have rosy cheeks. My hair is growing. Yes, I'm alive. She was like, and maybe if you come to the garden, you will be alive too. And you won't have to think about dying. And he says, well, that is a thought. Because, yeah, you are. Your face is. You do have rosy cheeks. And you have bright eyes, and your hair is looking beautiful. And you are like, you're not skinny anymore. She said, no, I used to be so frail. Wow. Maybe it would help you. So, Colin convinced them to take him down there and put him in a wheelchair. And Deacon came up and he would, you know, push him into the garden. But then they didn't want anybody to know it. So he said, all the workers must stay away. All the nurses must stay away from me while I'm out in the garden getting fresh air because it's good for me. So they out in the garden and he's watching them plant these things and he was like, I would love to help you do that. And then sooner or later he was helping them and he couldn't walk. But then one day by going out in the garden and getting the fresh air and seeing them run around with the flowers, he said, you know what? I think I can do it too. His appetite came back. He started eating more and he was helping them in the garden. And then one day he stood up all by himself. He was standing and he was like, they was looking. And then Mary was saying to herself, you can do it. You can do it. She was whispering, you can do it. You can do it. You can do whatever you want. And he was like, maybe this is magic. She said, maybe this secret garden is magic. Maybe this air is magic. Maybe everything around us is magic. You see how the garden was nothing but gray and dead, but now look at all the beautiful colors. It's alive. And you're alive, Mary, and I am alive. I'm becoming more and more alive. And Deacon was like, yes, you are. And so Deacon had a friend who was also an athlete. And he asked him, he said, well, what can, in some exercises that someone who had weak legs and arms, if they do some exercises to build their muscle up like yours. So the guy who was an athlete told Deacon different kinds of exercises, and Deacon remembered them. And so he went back to Colin and Mary and said, listen, if y'all do these exercises all the time, every day, you will become stronger and stronger. Your arms and your legs will become very strong. And he was like, and then every day they started doing these exercises. And now Colin could even stand up stronger and stronger and right up. And Mary was like, wow, you're so tall. I never knew you was that tall. And you're very, very handsome. Your face is starting to fill out. Because once he started doing these exercises and constantly going out into the garden and getting air, he became stronger and stronger. And his appetite came back. He was able to eat more and more. And then lo and behold, he became a strong young man. And he was walking around, he was running, he was having fun. But he didn't want the people in the manor to know, like the servants and the nurses, because they knew he was going to write the dad, because the dad would leave for months on end. And he wanted to surprise the dad and show him just how healthy he was, and how he wasn't an invalid, and how he wasn't a cripple, and how he was a strong boy who was going to live forever and ever and ever. And he was like, yeah, so what happened was, so when they used to always go back, he would get back in his wheelchair and they would pull him back up. And Deacon went home to tell his mother what was going on. And she was like, oh, wow, isn't that great? I heard about that poor little boy. Wow, and he's actually strong and healthy. And she was like, yes, and you should see him. He's looking amazing. But he wants his dad to come home so he can surprise his dad on how strong he got. So what Deacon Mother did, he wrote a letter to him. And Mr. Craven had got the letter. And when he was going through his things too, because he was so depressed that he lost his wife. And he had shut the world off and he became just very down and gray where he thought he would die. You know what I'm saying? So he would go to these different places and see these different things. And one day he had got this feeling like, oh, all his sorrows was leaving his body. And he was becoming quite alive himself again. Because he was so dead inside because of his wife leaving. And he thought about how bad he was treating his son and how he just wished he wasn't even around. And he was like, wow. And then when he received Deacon Mother's letter saying how he needed to come home because the garden waits for him, he thought about it. He said, wow. And he had a dream about the garden. and how the garden was just so beautiful and alive like it was when his wife was. And so he came on back. He came on back to his manor and he was walking around. He asked Miss the lady who was taking care of the home, have you seen Mary, and how is my boy doing? And they were surprised that he even asked about him because he normally wouldn't. He would just come back and do his work and then be off again. And he said, well, you should see him. He has changed. She was like, changed? I hope it's not for the worse. He was like, no. He has changed in tremendous ways. And he was like, wow. He was like, in the garden. He's out there in the garden. He's out in the garden every day, him and Mary and Deacon playing and laughing and things. Yes. And he was like, He said, well, I think I'm going to go out there. Are they out there now? He said, yes. So he was walking out there towards the garden, and he's just walking throughout the garden, looking to see if he see him. And he walks over to where he knew his wife garden was. And he walks over about there, down the corridor around me, and longer down the wall of, of the flowers and the vines that were hanging over the wall. And he knew where the door was. And he was like, I wonder if I can find the key. And he looks down to where he buried the key at. And he says that it's kind of shuffled and whatever. But then he turns back and he hears all this laughing and running and everything. And he's just listening. And the next thing you know, the door pops open and someone runs out the door and he catches them before they runs into him and falls to the ground. And the little boy looks up and he says, Daddy, it's me. Can you see? I'm running. I'm healthy and I'm well. And it's all because of me being in the garden. And it came alive just like I'm alive now. And I'm not gonna die and I'm gonna live forever and ever and ever. And he said, yes, you're right, you are. And you look amazing. You look healthy. He was like, and I missed you so much. And I am so sorry for being away from you for so long. And he was like, and you know what? I'm not dead anymore either. I'm alive. I'm alive inside. And I think it was all due to you and you becoming alive. And he was like, oh, Daddy, I missed you so much. He was like, can you not leave anymore for such long times and be home with me? And he said, yes, I will. I will always be here with you. I'm not going anywhere. And he hugged his son and he sat down and they sat up, went and walked into the garden and they sat up under the tree and they talked and he told his dad all the things that he's been doing and how he found magic and how magic has helped him and just the word of positive thinking and positive thoughts and saying them out loud, how it changed him and brought him back to life. Yep, and that was the story, guys. Yes, wasn't it beautiful? Yes, it was a great book. I really enjoyed it. I love positive things like that. Yes, it was called The Secret Garden, if you can see. Yes, but I thought it was beautiful. It was a beautiful story. I really enjoyed reading it. Yes, I really did. And that's what I was trying to tell you, that if you get out there into that fresh air and start living and not thinking about all the, and not having a negative mindset and always thinking about negative things and being down and, always think of positive and speak goodness and things like that. And things will turn around for you. When you start, they say, your mind can't hold two things at once. So when you start with those negative thoughts, just push them out with a positive one because it can only hold for one thought at a time. And if it's always holding positivity and good thoughts, things will turn for the better. Yes, and that's what magic is. All right? Mwah. Thanks for joining me, guys. And remember to like and subscribe if you like my channel and my videos and comment. All right? Love you.